Slow signing period for the Cardinals means I get to bring on some guests I was going to bring on last week. This time it's Fansided Sports Illustrated's Donnie Druin. Let's go.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at temporarily Locked On AZ Cards because I'm locked out of my damn Twitter account. It's been about a month. I'm working on it. I don't see an end in sight. But at Locked On AZ Cards, follow the podcast there as well. Go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on. It's going to be a hell of an offseason, a hell of a slow period, a hell of a list season, a hell of a minicamp season, and on until we hit week one in 2024. Today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Great read, cool dude, good Twitter follow. Donnie Druin from Sports Illustrated covering the Cardinals and the Suns joins me today. Donnie, thanks for joining me, dude. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem at all. I'm a big fan of your work as well. Definitely keep picking up on a lot of your phrases, little tendencies, stuff like that too. And I definitely don't envy you. This time of year, I can sit behind a keyboard and kind of try to think something out. You got to talk to these great people every single day, right? Your team every single day. That's kind of the Locked On mantra, right? So you got to find everything underneath the sun to talk about. And like we were talking about before we recorded, there's only so much you can do, right?
Yeah. It's it's easy when I call it the restrictor plate, when Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury are gone. Now there are possibilities. So you can always just make up situations and would Monti Ossenfort do this or this? I'm gonna ask you one at the end of the show. You just don't know about it yet. So this is how today's podcast is gonna go. We're gonna kind of do what I did with Bo Brock from PHNX Cardinals yesterday. Kind of a recap here of what we witnessed last season as we pivot into the tampering phase, and now as you're watching this, free agency is the league year has officially begun, and then we'll talk draft in the third segment because listen. We can continue to deep dive the 5 players that the Cardinals have signed outside of the State Farm Stadium walls. I think that's kind of a fool's errand at this point. There are bigger things to discuss based upon where the Cardinals are right now. So, Donnie, kind of walk me through, let's just start in week one, okay? Sure. New head coach, new OC, new DC, a bunch of coaches who have never been in the position that they currently hold, not just the coordinators, but also other positional coaches with the Cardinals. And no Kyler Murray, and all but 2-win season ahead of us. Will kind of walk me through the journey of what you experienced in 2023 and, your positive and negative takeaways.
I think growth might be the best way to describe it, because you have to remember, Alex, they hit the reset button quite hard, right? And that's something that Cardinals fans just have not seen under a guy like Steve Keim or Cliff Kingsbury the last couple of years, where they really tore it down. They got rid of some prominent names like Isaiah Simmons and DeAndre Hopkins. So they did a really great job restripping the roster. And you saw Josh Dobbs start out there week one, and you really didn't know what to expect. I think all you really could have asked for if you were a fan is just give me my money's worth every Sunday. I want to see these guys go out. I want to see them fight hard. I want to see them compete. And I think we saw that from the get-go, and I think we saw that up until the very, very end of the season. Granted, not everything was pretty. I mean, you really can't put lipstick on a pig whenever it comes to a 4-13 record, right? Like, you are what your record is. And, the Cardinals obviously need to have a lot of big improvements. But that being said, if you look at the work Jonathan Gannon did with a much less talented roster that Cliff Kingsbury had last year, ended up with the same record, didn't have his franchise quarterback half of the season. And for Kyler to come through, no preseason, no really good time to really get that offense underneath him without DeAndre Hopkins and working with almost entirely new offensive staff. Very impressive to say the least, but I think you had said it best. I think it was yesterday's episode. We've established the floor, and now we need to start getting better, right? So there was a lot of good, a lot of bad whenever it came to Arizona's 2023 season. I liked the fight. I liked the culture that Jonathan Gannon has brought, and I feel like people like me and you and everybody else in the media, we keep saying culture. But it's night and day different from Cliff Kingsbury in almost every single good way possible. Guys actively are wanting to play. They want to win. This whole, they're the same old Cardinals, it's gone. That's gone. It's, I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team next year. I'm not saying that they're not going to be, hosting a Lombardi Trophy or this and that. But at the end of the day, so much more better under Jonathan Gannon. And it really feels like this team has a sense of purpose. And more importantly, Alex, a sense of direction heading to 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's the shift away from dysfunctionality is kind of, I call it the restrictor plate, as I mentioned, you're taking that off and now you're just open up to myriad possibilities to choose your own adventure. There's a lot of, like, Monti Ossenfort can do whatever the hell they want. They got cap space for the next couple seasons. They've got all the draft picks. They've got a clean slate, tabula rasa, let's rock. This is the path they're going to take. And the one thing about Steve Keim is we didn't know what the path was because there really wasn't one. He was just kind of, throwing darts during the draft and then trying to allocate, draft capital and funds to be able to cover that up with veteran talent from elsewhere. And listen, all Cardinals fans, if you've been a Cardinals fan for 40 years, I understand, and we've had hard conversations about this. I understand why this looks the same. Because you don't know any other way. None of us do. I've been in sports radio and media for over 12 years in Arizona. I don't know any other way. But that's why all through this offseason, what I was kind of looking at was, what are the little takeaways? What are the little positives that have a future pacing possibility that you can look into 2024? It's like, okay, if that happens more, the Cardinals are going to be in a better spot. Like, if BJ Ojulari can continue that bend off the outside and can continue, like, BJ Ojulari scared the hell out of me during the first couple games that he was back because he was slow. He looked lost, and he was slow off the edge. Not a great combo for the Cardinals' second-round pick, even though they traded back and were able to get him anyways in the late 40s. But then little things started to happen. Garrett Williams had an interception. I think it was in his first game. Garrett Williams, the game never looked too fast for him. Michael Wilson, the game never looked too fast for him. And the offensive line on the right side was chef's kiss compared to what was expected, especially with Paris Johnson playing a new position. So I agree with you that all in all, it was a win in 2023. It was ugly a lot of the time. But man, we were staring at a 1-16 or 2-15 record. And the fact that they only won 4 games was almost a statistical anomaly with how many games they should have won. They should have won 7 games last year.
I would agree. And I think Monti Ossenfort and his staff kind of need their flowers or praise a little bit because especially in a business that is so result oriented where you need to produce in a timely manner or else you won't have a job. It would have been very easy for Ossenfort to kind of operate like Steve Keim did, maybe convince everybody that, hey, we're not too far away from where we could be. We just need to do X, Y, and Z and not kid ourselves. Ossenfort came in right away and made it very known, hey, this is not the team that's going to get back to the postseason. Let's hit the reset button like we should. Let's do things the nasty, the gritty way. And like you said, it was ugly. 2023 was very ugly from a win-loss perspective, but it needed to be. It absolutely needed it to be. So the Cardinals can find themselves in the position they're currently in right now, over $40 million in cap space after the first couple of days, according to Over the Cap, 10 picks in the 2024 NFL draft, 6 in the first 3 rounds, 2 first-round picks. You don't get that by not doing what Ossenfort did last year. So they need to continue to progress, like you had mentioned. They need to continue to hitting on both their second tier free agents, all of their draft picks and moving forward. They need to continue to collecting those players, but you have to be impressed with the start that the coaching staff and the regime has provided.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a so far so good. That's what it is. I mean, there's a plan, and it's not what everybody wants, especially. It's not what a lot of fans want, especially because of how slow the free agent, signings have been for the big names. They've brought in some guys, 2 on the defensive line, 1 at corner, 1 at, off ball / off the edge linebacker, who are going to immediately, as you mentioned, and as just raise the floor on this team. That's a win. Would you rather they've given $90 million or $50 million guaranteed to Calvin Ridley? No, it's not. Boring is best right now. Boring is best. And then one last thing I'll add, and you can add on this before we go over to the actual free agent signings and where that puts the Cardinals, especially for the rest of free agency as we approach the draft, 6 weeks away. I'm in the camp that very rarely do injuries, because obviously you never want anybody to get injured ever, even if it's your, your most hated rival. in where Kyler Murray's injury couldn't have happened at a better time during this transition, number one. And then number two, what it yielded, what it bred was a bunch of rookies getting to play meaningful snaps with zero pressure on them, which is the antithesis of what Steve Keim did. Marco Wilson, Byron Murphy, didn't matter. Whoever he drafted, it was for need and to start, regardless of being ready or not. So did you see that last year where it's like these rookies are playing freely with zero actual impact on outcome, with actual impact on if they're going to get their job lost or not?
Absolutely. You saw Kyler go down, what was it, early December last season?
Yeah.
They fired Cliff. Steve Keim walked away for health reasons. And then you saw the new regime come in, and that your first immediate thought was, okay, they're playing with house money this year. Like, there are no expectations for the Arizona Cardinals to come into 2023 and take a massive, massive win. And I think that was best kind of like summarized to me whenever they took BJ Ojulari in the second round, because if people remember, Ojulari, a ton of potential, but he was widely considered to be like a high-end project. Mm-hmm. And I thought, they could have stuck at 3. They could have took Will Anderson, a very ready now kind of guy, or they could have opted for a guy who didn't necessarily need to come in, produce right away despite being a second-round pick, and kind of just let these guys establish a new culture, get their feet underneath them, and really kind of start building for the future. And I keep going back to the bigger vision, right? Like 2023 was not the end-all be-all for fans, and like I get it. And kind of touching on this free agency class too, it's not exciting. They're not selling jerseys. People aren't calling up the team to buy season tickets. And for a fan, like, it does kind of suck, because like you want some good news. You want them to be excited about moving forward. You know what's exciting? Building something through the draft, establishing a winning culture, and really kind of putting your foot on the gas pedal and saying, hey, you know what? We know what the previous regime did. We're not them. We do not operate like them. We are building something for the future, and we want people in the seats at State Farm Stadium. I remember talking to Jonathan Gannon while we were waiting for our flight from Indianapolis a couple weeks ago. And I asked him, like, look, does it bother you that 49ers fans, every time the Niners are in town, they come and they invade State Farm Stadium? Alex, he looked at me dead in the face and said, we got to win. We have to win football games if people want to come and support them. We can't expect them to not show up if we're not putting on a winning product. And I think that best kind of just encapsulated that for me right there.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. It's true. It's a process, and now there are actual expectations, not massive ones, but now there are expectations after what we witnessed in 2023. Donnie Druin, writer for Sports Illustrated for the Cardinals and Suns, joins me. Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals. What about this free agent class? Let's discuss it next. We roll on here, Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by the Game Time app. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets for your next big event. It doesn't matter if it's Suns tickets, Coyotes tickets, Diamondbacks are right around the corner, concerts, stand-up comedy, whatever it is. Game Time's got you covered, man. It's a fast and easy way to buy tickets. And the coolest part is, I talk about this during every live read I do for Game Time, you can see the vantage point that you will be sitting in and looking from when you buy the tickets that you buy before you buy them, which is an absolute game changer. It takes the guess out of buying tickets. There's no more like, oh man, I'm sitting behind a damn pole. I didn't know that. Would have been nice to know before I spend my hard-earned money on tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals. Go to the YouTube channel. Please search Locked on Arizona Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button, man. Joined today by Donnie Druin of Sports Illustrated, talking Cardinals. I think, with Bo joining me yesterday and Donnie joining me today, it's a nice little hard reset here as we, skyrocket into the stratosphere of free agency and the draft and whatever's next. It's nice to have a little pause, talk about the signings, talk about the impact, even though it's not name recognition-wise a big impact. But it's exactly what the Cardinals need, and the Cardinals need to run their own damn race right now. So, running down the names, Sean Murphy-Bunting, drafted 2019 by the Bucks, had a one-year stay over with Tennessee last year, Super Bowl winner with Tampa Bay, comes in set to be the outside CB2 for the Cardinals. Bilal Nichols over from the Raiders. I talked to your boy Q and one of my closest friends here on the Locked On Podcast Network from Locked On Raiders, said he's a solid dude. It's a rotational piece. So the Cardinals need on the defensive line. Justin Jones from the Bears led the team in pressures last year. Some weren't so high on this pick, but another rotational piece. And, Mac Wilson coming over from the Patriots, played a little inside, played a little outside, and then DJ Dallas a couple days ago going to be the special teams sniper for the Cardinals. Donnie, I call this the shrubbery around the rose bush, where you have guys, veteran guys, who can come in, be rotational pieces, and allow the young players from last year's draft and who will soon to be drafted by the Cardinals in this year's draft flourish. That's where the learning curve shortens, and that's where a team can take a young team to the stratosphere with these somewhat mundane signings that could really prove to be impactful as just, backup dancers, as it were, to the young players.
I think Monti Ossenfort put it best. You build through the draft and you plug holes through free agency, right? I mean, how many teams can you count on one hand, Alex, where they've gone and spent bukus of money going to get the biggest names in free agency, and then it just turned out so great for them? Like, how many of those guys have ended up making a deep playoff run, holding a Lombardi trophy? It's very, very few. The teams that have done it built a solid foundation through the NFL draft by doing it, allowing them to get those premier guys on top of the roses, like you had said too. Not the sexiest class. Like I said a little bit earlier, it's not going to be selling any jerseys, but I think if you guaranteed fans, hey, we're immediately off the bat, we're going to get 4 starters on the defensive side of the ball to improve what was one of the worst defenses in the National Football League last year, I think everybody would have signed up for that. Like, granted that there's been a lot of talk about maybe the contract. You had brought up Justin Jones, and how everybody wasn't exactly a big fan of them. Mm-hmm. People are either going to complain about them not spending money whenever they have the salary cap space, or whenever they do spend the money, it's okay, what are we doing? I feel like sometimes it's a really big give or take with some Cardinals fans, just in terms of laying out the expectations. I don't have a problem with any of the signings. I think if you made me take my pick right now, Sean Murphy-Bunting arrives to a secondary that so desperately needed help after relying on 3 rookies last season. Mac Wilson, I'm so intrigued to see what the Cardinals do with him. Do they plug him inside next to Kaiser White? Do they have him come off the edge? Do they use him as kind of like that, versatile linebacker role that they had used in Philadelphia, maybe with like a Hassan Reddick type of deal? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think that's really exciting too. And then they needed guys along the defensive line. I'm surprised you or I didn't get a phone call to go play on the defensive line for them, right?
Yeah.
Both of those guys by no stretch of the imagination are bad. I will think there are some expectations for them to maybe live up to their price tag, even though it wasn't ginormous. They're still being paid a lot more money than most of those other guys too. But if they can make good on their potential, along with Dante Stills making that jump from year 1 to year 2,
yeah,
you have to you don't have to love it, but you have to like what they've done so far in free agency.
Yeah. This is, last year was tough, okay? And not because I love doing these shows. I can do 25 minutes with my eyes closed, and that's not a flex. It's just I've done this for a long time. But there were some phrases. I hate myself for using the same phrases over and over again because it was all in the abstract, okay? It's all been in the abstract. It's all future pacing, proof of concept, things like that. One of my favorite things that I've said for a long time is any step that's not a step backwards is a step forward for the Cardinals. And the Cardinals shot themselves in the foot so many times with the last regime. You're constantly taking a step backwards. You're constantly digging that hole. And once something good happens, you're still 12 steps behind everybody else because of everything you did before that. Every step that isn't a step backward is a step forward. And this is a step, a minimal step forward. You're building out this roster. What was it like? 40% of the 2021 roster or the 2022 roster ended up being on the Game Time 2023 roster. I can't name more than 20 players who should be brought back with a prominent role the Cardinals had last year. And that's what it is. You need guys. You need guys who are average at their craft, which will be, a bump up from where we are now for the majority of positions. Now, there's something that's interesting. Johnny Venerable from PHNX Cardinals asked Bo about this yesterday. He said that he has a source that the Cardinals are going to keep Paris Johnson Jr. on the right side, which something that that's one thing that is brain pretzeling me right now. Because not only are the Cardinals most likely going to take, Marvin Harrison Jr. At 4, it's like, okay, there is right guard potential abound at 27. Okay, there is secondary left tackle at 27. But if they're thinking about spending money and just patchworking the left side, I can't help but think that they need to do better than that with what we saw from Elijah Wilkerson and DJ Humphries last year. And Elijah Wilkerson missed some time. It was just a revolving door on the left side, Tristan Colon, et cetera. The right side, including Shelty Froholt, if you're going to group those 3 guys, a vision, especially compared to what we thought. But if they're going to keep Paris Johnson Jr. on the right side, I'm hard-pressed to know the plan for the left side of the offensive line. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure too. And like there were so many holes coming into this roster for 2024 moving forward. There was just no realistic way they were going to fill all of them, right? Like to have the perfect offseason would have been such a stretch. Maybe they're viewing it as like the lesser of two evils, kind of just having whatever on that left side of the offensive line. Wilkinson was brought back officially today. I don't know if I was surprised or not. I definitely thought they would have tried to make a push for a better left guard, but the guard market was just off the
banana,
roof this
insane.
year. Absolutely bananas. Humphreys is not going to be ready until deep into the 2024 season. I'm wondering if they're okay with getting a guy like Kelvin Beachum in there for 17 games. Personally, I would not be a fan of that. Like you said, at pick 27, do they turn at the left tackle market? What do we do? Is left guard even a potential thing there? And you did bring up a point I really did like, though. The entire right side, including Yalde at center, was very good. And personally, I'm a fan of keeping Parrish on the right side. I know he can play both. I'm a fan of keeping Parrish on the right side only because you've already seen very good things from Parrish Johnson Jr. And it's not like the NFL we watched 20 years ago, where all the premier pass rushers were on the quarterback's left side, right? Like there's studs everywhere now. Guys like Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, even sometimes Aaron Donald coming up on the right side. Nick Bosa, that he's going to see twice a year too. The right side is almost as important as the left side, right? We've seen what Parrish Johnson Jr. can do at that right tackle spot. I say keep him there, let him keep building that, and then you go and find somebody else for left tackle. Granted, I'm just a guy who types behind a computer for a living. They know much more about football than I do. If they put him on the left side, I am not complaining at all.
Yeah, understood. It's just a wait and see kind of thing because they're obviously, free agency just started technically yesterday. The new league year just started yesterday. So, it's as we're here Thursday of this week, it's a wait and see right now. Now with the draft, we're about 6 weeks away. I want to unpack this. I'm going to ask the burning question that I asked Bo yesterday to Donnie Druin of SI covering the Cardinals and Suns. We're going to do that next as we roll on here. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by Bink Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost of every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. To get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right. No cap on 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. And this offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Final segment here on a Thursday edition of Locked on Cardinals. Thank you for making Locked on Cardinals your first listen free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Go to the YouTube channel, search Locked on Arizona Cardinals, hit that subscribe button. Give me a follow at Locked on AZ Cards on Twitter. You know me. I don't say, hey, you must go follow. Hey, go leave me a review. I don't say that. I'm happy you're here. I say that all the time. Go follow at Locked on AZ Cards and follow me at Clancy's Corner because Elon is screwing me right now. Donnie Druin, Sports Illustrated writer, Cardinals Suns, joining me here on Thursday. We've, had a introspection into what Donnie thought of the 2023 season overall, kind of the discussion over the handful of signings the Cardinals have made so far, obviously TBD on the rest, and my disclaimer that I normally do at the beginning of the show this week. If something happens after I record this, I didn't keep it from you on purpose. It just happened after I recorded this, and I'll hit it on Friday's show. Okay, the draft. The Cardinals have needs everywhere. As long as they don't draft a quarterback, a running back, or a tight end in the first round, it's, it fills all, probably safety also. It fills a need. Okay, so say 4 overall, they draft Marvin Harrison Jr. Okay, I'm going to bring up an alternative universe later, but say they draft 4 overall. The combine really screwed with my brain for a couple different reasons. One, Chop Robinson is really fast. Okay, Chop Robinson is an edge rusher out of Penn State. Okay. Was set to be an early second-round pick, fringe first-round pick, in the 30, 31, 32 range. And then he ran a sub-4.7 40, and it's like, oh, mamacita. Everything changed. His measurables out of this world. And when I mentioned that the Cardinals, it doesn't matter what position, as long as it's not, a couple, it's a win. I can't get my head wrapped around them not taking a premium position at 27, not only because they need it, but also the cap flexibility you have with a pass rusher, especially if he gets a second-year deal, like Nick Bosa or somebody, a top guy. It's going to be so expensive. You get that on the cheap for 5 controllable years, which I would assume it's some even minusculely goes into the thought process of Monti Ossenfort when you're drafting at 27, right?
No, absolutely. I think like you said, the Cardinals have a lot of needs. Do they adopt like a BPA scenario to where they're not drafting based off of need? They just say, hey, you know what? We were 4-13 last year. We got a plethora of picks.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take good football players and kind of see what happens. Because normally when you draft good guys, good things happen, right? And no, some GMs get really caught up in trying to fit like a square peg in a round hole because, we need this position. Let's go and get our guy now. I can't speak too much to pick number 27 and what might happen there. Number 4 is interesting, man. Number 4 is crazy interesting. A lot of talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. Personally, if I'm a Cardinals fan, I would be ecstatic about that. And I think the marketing team for Arizona would be thrilled with that selection too. You've seen what young wide receivers can do, a la Jamar Chase, a la Justin Jefferson for an offense. Kyler does need that legitimate number 1 target, regardless if Marquise Brown comes back or not. I'm so sorry if I'm spoiling your question for me a little bit later in this alternate universe. I don't think we're talking about them trading back enough. I really don't.
So let's transition into that because we got a couple minutes here. Draft Marvin Harrison Jr. or get a fringe. So say you get offered a fringe Trey Lance package, say 2 firsts, the 2nd this year and a 3rd next year to move back to Minnesota at 12, Denver at 13, or the Raiders at 14. I think they're 12, 13, 14. 11, 12, 13, 12, 13, 14. So you're out of the race for everything. You're most likely out of the race for Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze if you move back also. So you don't not only get not one of the top 3 wide receivers, not one of the top offensive linemen, Olu Fashanu might be there. Do you draft Marvin Harrison Jr., or do you get that haul and continue to kick the can down the positive road, as I say?
Ooh, can I tweak? Let me ask you this. Can I move back into the top 10 like they did last year?
Yeah.
Okay. Second question. If we're operating like we're the GM, right? Do we have Neighbors, Odunze, and Harrison closely graded together, or is there a significant drop-off between Harrison and the other 2?
I don't think it – well, so here's the thing. I think that gets thrown out the window when you make the choice to not draft Marvin Harrison Jr. because then you lose all control. You lose all control. So it doesn't really matter. Like, yeah, of course it matters where it's like, there's a chance they could be there. You may have to give up one of the first rounders you just got to move back into 7 or jump back up to 8. So it would be kind of a fool's – like it's – the trade back and trade back up I think was an outlier. Even though it was Monty's first year, I don't think that was the plan. I think they were like, okay, so you got this. Went Will Anderson, then it went Tyree Wilson, I think. And then, there's a couple guys like, oh, wait. These 3 teams need offensive linemen. We got a future first. If we don't have to give up any of our picks and we only have to give up Houston's pick to move back up and some change, I think that it was more happenstance than anything.
Sure. Okay.
I could be wrong. I mean, obviously, I haven't talked to Monty. I wasn't in but that is a very, very risky move to make with a lot of things that are outside of your control. If you move back with the intent to move back up, I mean, I don't know. It's just a lot of juggling. I mean, maybe that's in their back pocket. Obviously, I wasn't in the war room.
No, this is so tough, man. Can I know what Bo said?
He said Marvin Harrison Jr.
Okay. I'm kind of leaning towards the other direction, and I know how tempting it is to get that surefire thing because Cardinals fans saw their team move back last year and pass up on a guy like Will Anderson Jr., who ended up winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. I really understand the need for a premier target, but man, if you can collect such a draft haul and continue getting more throws at the dartboard with so many holes on this football team, the Cardinals are not one wide receiver away. And like I get it. I would be thrilled if Marvin Harrison Jr. ends up as an Arizona Cardinal. I think he would do a lot of great things for Arizona's offense. And I definitely think a guy like Kyler Murray would be ecstatic to get him. That being said, if you're offering me the Trey Lance type of package, that's really tempting for me because you can still get phenomenal players at pick number 12.
Yeah. And you probably get a second round pick this year too. So it's just like you could heighten the floor, astronomically quicker for this year, but at what price? I mean, that's really what it is. Like if Marvin Harrison Jr. is 80% or 85% of what he's not going to be West Virginia Kevin White. Or I don't think Kevin White went to West Virginia. I think I'm thinking of somebody else. Pat White. Never mind. If he's not, he's going to be good enough. It doesn't like, this isn't like a bust scenario. Okay. Does have little injury concerns here and there with Ohio State. When he goes up and he hits the ground hard, he misses plays and things like that. We've seen through his college career, but like, here's the thing. The Cardinals need to keep it simple, and keeping it simple may just be taking what Trevor Sikkema called. Trevor Sikkema, one of my dear friends, Pro Football Focus. I said this on yesterday's show, but this blew my mind when he said it. He said Marvin Harrison Jr. may be the highest graded player he's ever graded, which is insane. So if the Cardinals have the opportunity, you just take them. So it's like
sure. NFL Network's Daniel Jeremiah. So sorry to interrupt you, but yeah. Daniel Jeremiah said that the top 3 players on his board are all wide receivers. Jesus. And Marvin Harrison being the number 1. So it's almost kind of like that Family Guy like joke where it's like, hey, we could either have a boat or we could have this box, which could be a boat. It's like you don't at a certain point you don't move back to hope you draft a player as good as Marvin Harrison Jr. when you have the opportunity to do that. I completely understand that line of thinking.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Donnie, Druin, Sports Illustrated, joining me. Really appreciate it, man. Thanks for hanging out. I do.
No, I appreciate having me on. I really
check him out all over Sports Illustrated. Puts out great work. Puts out 30 million articles a week. It seems, especially this time of year. So go check him out. Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals. Remember, without you, there is no me. I will talk to you tomorrow.